At 19, I thought I had it all figured out. Life was simple, exciting, and full of promise. I had dreams that stretched far beyond the walls of my small town. I loved staying out late with friends, talking about the future like it was some grand adventure waiting just around the corner. Every day felt like a step toward something bigger, a career, freedom, maybe even fame. I was full of energy, always on the move, chasing the next thrill. I felt invincible. It's strange how fast things can change. One minute, you're laughing with your friends, and the next, your world flips upside down. That's what happened to me. One ordinary day, out of nowhere, everything I knew was ripped away from me. I remember the sound. I remember the stillness that followed. My body wouldn't move. I couldn't feel my legs. I didn't understand what was happening, and honestly, I didn't want to believe it. Panic set in slowly at first. My mind was racing, but my body stayed still. It was like I was trapped inside myself, screaming, but no one could hear. People were shouting around me, trying to help, but all I could think about was, asterisk, this can't be real. This can't be happening to me. Asterisk, I had just turned 19. I hadn't even started living yet. How could it end like this? Time blurred after that. I remember lights, sirens, cold hospital walls. I remember faces, some I knew, some I didn't. Everyone looked scared, and that scared me even more. I wanted someone to tell me it was all going to be okay. I wanted someone to say it was just a bad dream, and I'd wake up and walk out of there. But that's not what happened. Instead, I lay there, trying to piece together what was left of the life I knew. Every second felt like an hour. I could see my mother crying, trying to stay strong for me. I could feel the weight of silence from my friends who didn't know what to say. I felt like I was slipping away from everything that had made me me, and no one could stop it. But the strange thing is, even in those moments of fear and confusion, a small part of me was still hoping that somehow this wouldn't be the end, that maybe, just maybe, I could find a way back. I didn't know then how long the road would be. I didn't know how much pain, doubt, and anger I'd have to face. But I also didn't know what kind of strength I would discover, or how this one moment would reshape my entire life. And that moment, the one where it all changed, is where the story really begins. Before everything changed, life was full of movement. I was always on the go, running to classes, meeting friends, staying up late, watching movies, or riding my bike just to feel the wind on my face. That feeling of freedom was everything to me. I never thought twice about getting out of bed, walking to the kitchen, or jumping over the last few stairs, just because I could. My body never felt like a limit. It was a tool, a gift I didn't even know I had. School was tough sometimes, but I had big plans. I wanted to do something meaningful, something exciting. Maybe something with music or sports or even travel. I didn't have it all figured out, but I was excited to try. I had this idea that life was like a mountain I was slowly climbing, one dream at a time. Nothing felt out of reach. Not really. My weekends were filled with laughter. I had a small group of close friends, the kind that didn't care if you were rich or smart or popular. We'd talk about everything and nothing, drive around for no reason, sit under the stars and imagine what our lives would look like in 5 years. We believed in the future, in ourselves. We thought we had time. So much time. I was into sports too, not at a professional level, but enough to keep my heart pumping. I liked the way it felt to run, to compete, to win, even to lose sometimes because it meant I had something to work toward. My legs were strong, my body was fast, and I trusted it to carry me through anything. At home, things weren't perfect, but they were good. My parents worked hard, and we didn't always have everything, but we had enough. Enough to feel safe. Enough to dream. My little sister used to joke that I acted like a superhero, always climbing something, racing somewhere, never sitting still. I didn't realize how much that freedom mattered to me. Not until it was gone. There was no warning. No sign that something was coming to take all of that away. If I had known, maybe I would have slowed down more. Maybe I would have taken one extra moment to enjoy those quiet, normal things, like walking to the fridge, like standing in the shower, like dancing around my room when no one was watching. But when you're 19, you think life will wait for you. You think you'll have another chance, another summer, another ride down the street with your headphones in and the sun on your face. You never think that one day your legs might stop listening, that you'll reach for the floor with your feet and feel nothing at all. That's the thing about life. It doesn't always ask if you're ready before it changes everything. It happened on an ordinary day, the kind you don't expect to remember forever. I wasn't doing anything wild or reckless. Just out with some friends, the usual weekend energy, music playing, laughter, everything feeling light. We were driving back from a get-together, nothing special. It was late, but not too late. We'd done it 100 times before. I don't remember the exact second it happened. What I remember is the sudden jolt, the sound of screeching tires, and then silence. Not a calm silence, a terrifying, hollow one. My heart was racing, but my body felt frozen. I couldn't tell where I was or what position I was in. I tried to move, but nothing happened. I blinked, and the world around me spun in slow motion. There was shouting. Someone called my name. I could hear panic in their voice, but I couldn't answer. I tried to lift my hand, but it stayed still. That's when the fear hit. A deep, sharp fear I had never felt before. Not just fear of pain, fear of not being able to move, fear of being trapped inside myself. People say your life flashes before your eyes. That didn't happen to me. What flashed was confusion. Questions. What just happened? Why can't I move? Is this real? Am I dying? But the scariest question, the one that gripped me hardest, was what if this never goes away? I could feel pressure in my chest. I could feel tears, but not the rest of my body. My legs, my hips, nothing. They were just gone, like someone had shut them off. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake up. I kept waiting for the moment where everything would snap back to normal. But it didn't. The ambulance arrived, and I was lifted onto a stretcher. I remember looking up at the night sky, the stars still shining like nothing had happened. It felt cruel, like the world was continuing just fine, while mine had stopped cold. Inside the hospital, everything moved fast. Lights passed overhead, machines beeped, people asked questions I couldn't answer. Then there were the scans, the pokes, the whispering voices behind curtains. I remember a doctor leaning over me trying to stay calm. His face said more than his words did. Then came the sentence that punched a hole in my chest. You've suffered a spinal cord injury, and right now, you can't feel your lower body because there's damage to the nerves. I didn't cry. Not then. I think my brain refused to accept it. I just stared at the ceiling, trying to breathe, trying to stay present, while everything inside me shattered. Part of me still believed they were wrong, that I'd wake up tomorrow, wiggle my toes, and walk out of there. But the next morning came, and I still couldn't move. The hospital room became my entire world. Bright lights during the day, shadows at night, the hum of machines that never stopped. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, not knowing what to think or feel. Nurses came and went. Doctors checked my charts. Everyone was kind, but no one could fix me. That's how it felt, like I was broken beyond repair. I kept waiting for someone to tell me they'd made a mistake, that I'd start feeling something soon, that maybe the swelling would go down and I'd move my legs again. But instead, I heard quiet conversations outside my door. The kind people have when they're trying not to be heard. The kind where the truth is too heavy to speak out loud. Then came the moment I'll never forget. A doctor sat beside my bed. He didn't rush. He looked me in the eyes, and he said it clearly. You have a complete spinal cord injury. You won't be able to walk again. Just like that. The words landed like a blow to the chest. My ears rang. My vision blurred. I nodded, but I didn't understand. Or maybe I just didn't want to. I think I went numb. Not just physically, but emotionally too. How could I not? My entire future had been rewritten in a single sentence. My mom was in the room when he said it. I remember her gripping my hand so tightly, like she could hold the pain for me. But I could see her try not to cry. She waited until the doctor left the room. Then she broke down. And seeing her cry, Seeing the strongest person I knew fall apart, that's when it hit me. This wasn't just happening to me. It was happening to everyone who loved me. Friends visited, but the conversations were strange. They didn't know what to say. Some said, "You'll be okay," but their eyes said something different. Some tried to make jokes, like nothing had changed. Others stayed quiet and just sat beside me, which somehow hurt the least. A few stopped coming altogether. I didn't blame them. I barely recognized myself either. The worst part wasn't the pain, it was the stillness. The way time dragged, the way the silence between visits felt like a lifetime. I couldn't escape my thoughts. I kept asking, why me? What did I do to deserve this? I replayed the accident in my head 1,000 times, trying to find something amiss, a moment where I could have changed the outcome, but there was nothing. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't move. I felt like I didn't belong in my own body anymore. Everything I once took for granted, walking, stretching, even just turning over in bed, was now impossible. I was stuck, surrounded by walls and machines, and every day felt like I was drifting further from the person I used to be. The days that followed felt endless. Each one bled into the next, like time had lost all meaning. Morning or night, it didn't really matter anymore. I was just there, lying still, trapped in a body that wouldn't move, surrounded by people who couldn't understand what that felt like. Even when the room was full, I felt completely alone. The pain wasn't just physical. Yes, there were aches and needles and strange burning sensations where I could still feel something, but the real pain was inside. It was the kind that doesn't show up on scans, the kind that makes you stare at the wall for hours, wondering who you are now. I cried in silence. I got good at hiding it. When nurses walked in, I smiled just enough so they wouldn't ask questions. When friends called, I said I was fine, because it was easier than explaining the storm in my head. There were days I didn't want to talk to anyone. I wanted the world to forget me because I couldn't stand the thought of being the paralyzed kid everyone pitied. I didn't want their sad looks or awkward encouragement. I wanted my old life back. I wanted to rewind time and take a different road, make a different choice, something, anything that would undo what had happened. But no matter how many times I wished, nothing changed. At night, when the hospital halls were quiet and everything was still, my mind would go to dark places. I thought about giving up. What was the point of dreaming if I couldn't even get out of bed? What kind of life could I have now? All the things I used to love, running, riding, dancing, even just walking outside to feel the grass, were gone. And no one could promise they'd ever come back. There were moments I scared myself. Times I stared at the ceiling and thought, asterisk, maybe this is it. Maybe this is all there's left. Asterisk, I didn't tell anyone how deep the sadness really went. I didn't want to worry them. But inside, I was sinking fast, and I didn't know how to stop it. People around me kept saying things like, "You're strong," or "You'll get through this," but I didn't feel strong. I felt shattered, and I hated how everyone expected me to be brave, like I wasn't allowed to break down, like being positive was the only option. But the truth is, I wasn't okay. I was scared, angry, and tired. So tired. Sometimes I wondered if anyone truly saw me anymore. Not just the injury. Not the wheelchair. Me. The person who still existed somewhere under all this pain and silence. I didn't know how to find that person again. I didn't even know if he was still there. It didn't happen all at once. There was no big movie moment where I suddenly felt strong and ready to fight back. It started with something small. One morning, a nurse came in to do her usual routine. She asked how I was feeling, and I said, "I don't know." I meant it. I really didn't. But she stopped what she was doing, looked at me and said, "That's okay. You don't have to know today. Just don't stop trying." Those words stuck with me. I didn't even understand why at first, but later that night, when I was lying awake again, I kept hearing them in my head. Asterisk, you don't have to know today. Just don't stop trying. Asterisk, it was the first time someone gave me permission to be lost without giving up. That felt like something I could hold on to. A few days later, a therapist came in and told me we'd be starting some very basic rehab. I didn't want to do it. I thought, what's the point? But I said yes anyway. The first session was hard, not just physically, but mentally. Sitting up was a challenge. My muscles felt like strangers, but I did it, just for a few minutes. And when it was over, I cried, not because it hurt, but because I had done something small but real. After that, I started noticing things. A part of me still wanted to live. It wasn't loud or confident. It was quiet, like a whisper in the background, but it was there. When friends visited, I didn't fake my smile as much. When nurses helped me through painful routines, I didn't look away. I started asking questions about therapy, about progress, about what was still possible. I didn't like the answers all the time, but I listened. One day, a man in a wheelchair rolled into my room. I didn't know who he was, but he introduced himself with a smile and said, "I've been where you are." He told me his story, his injury, his fight, how he had wanted to give up too, and how he didn't. He showed me pictures of his life now, his family, his work, his travels, and suddenly the world felt a little bigger again, a little more open. I realized I had been waiting for someone to save me, but maybe I had to save myself. Not in one big moment, but little by little, choice by choice, even if it was just waking up and deciding to try again. So I started doing more. I started pushing back, not just against the injury, but against the fear, against the story that told me I was finished. I didn't know what the future looked like. I didn't know how long the fight would take, but I was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, it was still worth fighting for. Rehab became my new normal. The hospital bed was replaced by a therapy room filled with machines, bars, and mats. Nothing about it was easy. Everything took effort. Things most people never even think about: balancing upright, shifting weight, grabbing onto something, suddenly became battles I had to fight every single day. But I showed up, even on the days I didn't feel like it, especially on those days. The first time I transferred from the bed to a wheelchair on my own, it felt like a mountain. I remember how my arms shook, how I almost gave up halfway through. But I didn't. I made it. The chair wasn't a defeat anymore. It was freedom in a strange new way. It meant I could move. I could go places again, even if it looked different now. And that one little victory gave me just enough hope to try for another. I learned how to dress myself again, how to use tools to grab things I couldn't reach, how to navigate curbs and doorways. None of it was graceful at first. I fell. I got frustrated. I got embarrassed. But I kept going, because each skill I relearned brought a piece of my independence back. Piece by piece, I started to feel human again. Not broken, just changed. One day during therapy, a young girl came in. She had braces on her legs and was trying to walk between the bars. She looked over at me, smiled, and waved. She didn't say a word, but something about her courage hit me hard. I wasn't alone. People of all ages were fighting their own battles in that room every day. I started talking to them, hearing their stories, sharing mine. We were all hurting, but we were healing, too, in ways that didn't always show on the outside. My family showed up for me in ways I never expected. My mom started learning about spinal injuries. My dad figured out how to install ramps at home. My sister used to sit beside me, reading random articles or just holding my hand when I was too tired to speak. They didn't always have the right words, but they stayed. That mattered more than anything. I also started to notice how people looked at me in public. Some looked away. Some stared too long. Some tried to help when I didn't need it. At first, it bothered me. I hated being seen as weak or helpless. But slowly, I realized they just didn't understand. How could they? They hadn't lived it. I used to be like them once. So I stopped taking it personally. I started using it as a chance to show them something different. That life doesn't end when something like this happens. It just begins again in a new way. The more I accepted my new reality, the less it felt like a prison. And the more it started to feel like a challenge I could face, maybe even overcome. There was a day, not long after I left the hospital, when I rolled outside alone for the first time. The air felt different. Colder, sharper, more real. I wasn't surrounded by nurses anymore. There were no therapists watching every move, just me, the sidewalk, and the noise of life carrying on around me. It felt terrifying and freeing at the same time. I rolled through the park near my house, the same one I used to run through without thinking. I watched people jog past me, couples walking hand in hand, kids racing each other through the grass. It was hard not to feel like I was on the outside of it all, like I was looking into a world that I used to be part of, a world that now felt so far away. But then something shifted. A little boy ran past me, stopped, and turned around. He stared at my wheelchair with wide eyes and asked, "Is that like a car?" I smiled. "Kind of," I said, "but it doesn't need gas." He laughed, said "cool," and ran off again. That moment stayed with me. He didn't see something broken. He saw something different, maybe even interesting. It reminded me that how people see me often starts with how I see myself. I started doing more things on my own, going to the store, taking the bus, figuring out how to move through a world that wasn't built for people like me. There were challenges everywhere, doors that were too heavy, ramps that were too steep, people who spoke to the person next to me instead of to me. But I didn't let that stop me. Each obstacle just became part of the journey. One more thing to figure out. At home, I made changes. I reorganized my room, set things within reach, learned how to cook from my chair. It wasn't perfect. It took time. But every little win made me feel more in control, more alive. I started writing again, too. Just a few lines a day. Thoughts, memories, questions. It helped me understand what I was feeling, and it helped me see how far I'd come. I also connected with others online, people living with injuries like mine, people who were ahead of me in their journey, and some just starting. We shared tips, stories, and frustrations. It felt good to be seen by people who didn't need everything explained. They understood without me having to say much. That kind of connection is rare and powerful. There were still hard days. Of course there were. Days where I missed my old life, so much it physically hurt. Days where I didn't want to smile or pretend to be strong. But slowly I was starting to understand something. Strength wasn't about pretending. It was about continuing, showing up, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. And I was still here, still showing up. The seasons started to change. I could feel it in the air, cooler mornings, softer light, the kind that makes everything look a little more golden. It reminded me of how time keeps moving even when you feel stuck. I wasn't the same person I was when I first woke up in that hospital bed. I didn't even realize how much had changed until I looked back and saw the distance I'd already covered. One morning, during rehab, my therapist asked if I wanted to try something new, adaptive sports. I laughed at first. Sports? I hadn't thought about sports in months. The idea felt almost ridiculous. But I said yes. I was curious. Nervous, but curious. We went to a local gym, and there was a group of people just like me. Some in wheelchairs, some using crutches, all of them moving, playing, competing. The energy in the room was electric. That day, I tried wheelchair basketball, and even though I was terrible at it, something inside me lit up. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't focused on what I couldn't do. I was focused on what I was doing. The way the chair moved when I pushed it hard, the bounce of the ball, the laughter when someone missed a shot, it brought something back that I thought I'd lost forever. Joy. That feeling carried over into other parts of my life. I began setting goals again. Small ones at first, wheel myself around the block without stopping, learn to transfer into the driver's seat of a car, cook a full meal without help. Every goal I reached reminded me that I still had power, still had choice, still had a future. People around me started to notice, not just the physical changes, but something in my attitude. I wasn't smiling just to make others comfortable anymore. I was smiling because I meant it. I was finding purpose again. I started talking to schools and groups about my story, not to get sympathy, but to show people that adversity isn't the end of a story, it's just a different chapter. Some nights, I'd still have moments of sadness. I'd lie in bed and remember what it felt like to run, to dance, to wake up without needing help. But those moments didn't break me like they used to. I let myself feel them, and then I moved forward. Because feeling pain doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're alive. I also learned how to laugh again. Really laugh. I stopped taking myself so seriously. I accepted that falling, failing, struggling, those things are just part of the process. They don't define me. What defines me is the decision to get back up over and over, no matter how many times life knocks me down. And even though I couldn't walk anymore, I was learning to move through life with strength, with heart, and maybe even with more courage than before.